So, to start with, I thought I'd just tell you guys a little bit about my own background. Growing up, I was raised in the Methodist Church. My mom was a faithful every Sunday attendee, and so were me and my brothers. We did all the things. We did Sunday school, we did vacation Bible school. I did what I guess is sort of the equivalent to an altar boy in the Methodist Church. I was a page. I was an acolyte, which involved being terrified and standing in the pulpit and reading the like call and response prayer. That was the worst one. And I was a crucifer. I did youth group. I did everything. And my mom gave us the choice when we graduated high school whether or not we wanted to continue. And I have not continued in the Methodist Church. Um, I will say I don't feel that it was harmful. I really had a lot of fun with the kids my age, but it did sow seeds of confusion and doubt, which is kind of funny. It's like the direct opposite of what the church is trying to do. Um, but Jesus to me was a character in a fairy tale. I read a lot of fairy tales. I was a big fan of the Grimm's, the Brothers Grimm. Um, and I just thought, like, walking on water, magic tricks with the loaves and the fishes, coming back from the dead. Like, this just seems not too real to me. Like, I just didn't buy it. So Easter was pretty easy to shrug off. Um, and as a kid, I kind of felt like it's a second rate holiday anyway. Like, it could not compare to the Christmas extravaganza, of the whole month of December and presents. So it didn't really register to me at all. And it actually, in fact, I was well into adulthood when I went to Loose Leaf Hollow for the first time. And when I stepped into Joe Zendo and I saw the icon of Yeshua, the Aramaic Yeshua on his wall, that was the moment when I realized that Yeshua is real. That caught my attention. That resonated with me. Everything changed when I saw that image. And so I do want to talk about resurrection. It's a big deal. Dying and coming back to life, like, who does that? That's wild. And the truth is that actually we all do. We can all do that if we practice. I have a few passages to read to you. The first is from my Mary Magdalene Oracle, which is by Megan Watterson. And she says, scholars believe that Christ spoke Aramaic, among other languages, and the Aramaic word for death translates as existing elsewhere. This translation implies that when the body ceases to function, the essence of who we are, this presence of love within us, still exists, just mysteriously somewhere else. Death, then, is not an end, but an irrevocable transition, a transformation from being present in the body, behind our eyes, to being present in a place that's ultimately unknowable to the living. This translation of death also allows us to understand the way that the egoic self can cause a form of death by forcing us to exist elsewhere at different points throughout our lifetime. And so the idea of existing elsewhere, it really happens all the time when we're ruminating on the past, or like me, projecting into the wreckage of my future, when we are anywhere but in this present moment. And I find that really interesting that the word for death in Aramaic really translates to existing elsewhere. I also want to read another passage. This is on resurrection, also from the Mary Magdalene Oracle. The Gospel of Philip explains, You must awaken while in this body, for everything exists in it. Resurrect in this life. The Christians of the first century, or the Christ movement, practiced kenosis, self-emptying love, which releases all attachments to the powers of the ego that have us caged in some form of fear or self-doubt. We let the ego die so the soul can rise. This way, the soul can evolve right here in the human body. The myth of the phoenix always comes to mind with the word resurrection. It's a magical bird that endures an endless cycle of burning up in flames and then emerges reborn from the ashes. So I want you to just notice the emphasis on the present moment and on being embodied. Notice too, oh, did I read that part? Nope, I didn't. I have one more thing to read. Resurrection here is not about what comes in the next life. Resurrection is about what we can practice right now, in this body, in this life. We can awaken to the potential of transformation with every tragedy or disappointment or loss in life, and see everything that happens as a chance for the soul to rise. We can see each death we go through as a chance to resurrect more entirely present to this soul of love within us that survives every fire. So now I want you to notice the emphasis on the present moment, about being embodied. And also, I found it interesting that she didn't mention moments of delight and joy, which certainly there are, but she mentions the moments of tragedy and loss as being opportunities for our souls to rise. I used Thich Nhat Hanh's talk about resurrection as a practice that he did on Easter Sunday in 2014, also as part of my inspiration for this talk. And I will say that I was very intrigued by this idea of resurrection as a practice, like with intention. I'm pretty sure I thought I was about to unlock like the secrets of the universe and like find that magic bullet that was going to like solve all my problems. The message was simple, and it's mindfulness, which I know that wasn't a surprise, really. Not a secret. By learning how to breathe, walk, eat, drink, whatever, mindfully, we bring ourselves back from existing elsewhere, from that idea of death to the present moment, back into our bodies, keeping our heads where our feet are, as they say in the 12-step rooms. And as Joe says, now, here, this. And remember what Megan Watterson said about resurrection. It's about what we can practice right now in this body, in this life. We can awaken to the potential for transformation, but we have to be abiding in the here and now. She also says, all it takes to be present again, all it takes to come back to this body, this one ferociously precious life, to this potent moment, is 3 breaths. And this is both the easiest and the hardest thing about being human, because it takes becoming aware that we are no longer present. And that's the arduous part. It takes waking up again and again, fighting for our capacity to be here, to exist intensely. So it's true. It's the simplest and the hardest thing to do. It's ridiculously simple to take 3 breaths. Thich Nhat Hanh says 2 seconds. But to do that, we have to recognize when we have drifted off. And I also love how she calls it a ferociously precious life, because it takes ferocity. You have to be a little ferocious to do this. It's like a terrier, never giving up. I think that we are here to forget and remember over and over again. This is news to me. I've heard it before, but I really am landing in this place of it is not about walking around in a state of Zen all the time. My purpose here is to forget and remember. We're meant to fall asleep over and over again so that we can practice waking up. Resurrection is a practice. Well, I think it might be the practice. When we're living deeply and intensely, being mindful can bring us in contact with suffering. I cannot talk about resurrection without talking about suffering. I would be remiss if I only focused on the joy. When we come into contact with suffering, it could be ours, it could be someone else's, could be from our ancestors. It's possible it's coming from the whole entire world. And when I didn't believe Jesus was real, it was very easy for me to sort of brush off and overlook his suffering. And to be honest, it's very difficult to sit with it now, the reality of his physical suffering. I can barely touch it. It's really hard to think about. But when I do, even just the tiniest bit, what comes to me is all the suffering that sentient beings are experiencing. And although there's not a whole lot, I am not omnipotent. I keep trying to remind myself. There's not a whole lot I can personally do. What I do think about is being motivated myself to cause less suffering to others in my own imperfect way. I think it wakes up compassion. I think it wakes up mindfulness about how my actions affect other people. And I can make intentional choices in my life that do not feed suffering, that do not lead to the suffering of others. And maybe that's my one way of sort of bowing to the suffering of Yeshua. And suffering is a reality. I often fall into the Buddha trap I mention all the time, and I think it's supposed to always be about peace, love, and joy. And I think suffering shouldn't be present, but it's a reality, and there's an enormous tendency to run away from it. I wonder sometimes if even my thinking that I should be, Buddha incarnate is sort of a way of running away from it too. And it shows up in my life in certain ways. I've noticed lately that I have been clinging to objects and things as a way to pad myself from some painful experiences or just something that I perceive might be painful. And so mindfulness is helpful here, to just notice what I'm doing and to notice if I still want to keep doing it. So I think it's interesting to consider how mindfulness and noticing is the antidote for suffering. And I think we know that too. If we've been hanging around here for any length of time, we've certainly heard that before. Recognizing it, turning towards it, to embracing it, or even welcoming it, as Rumi likes to remind us in the guest house. When we do trauma work, there's a saying, what we resist persists. And I think that transformation happens when we stop resisting. And that can be just as simple as taking one single breath. And that's all I have for you today.